What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning. I know I normally do these tier list videos on Monday, but I'll be honest, yesterday was kind of super long. I didn't really have a chance to do it. I tried to record Sunday night. I didn't get a chance either because I spent all night trying to pack up, leaving the venue. So here we are. Let's dive into our tier list for champs. We have 4 teams going home, will not attend champs. We got 8 left. Let's see how they rank going into the event in Las Vegas. All right, so here's a tier list we made prior to the major. I've changed a couple of these categories. We're going to start shuffling teams here in a sec, but if you're new, I don't do the letter thing, the S, A, B, C. I think it's all kind of whack. We do it this way, and when I say this way, this is how I'm going to do it going into champs. It's a slight twist on the previous ones. So Sunday regulars, I think for the case of this video, is probably going to be 2 to 3 teams. I think probably your most likely teams to make the grand final of champs. There's only going to be 1 match on Sunday for this event. Everybody else, in terms of like top 4, is going to play on Saturday. Until we get down to 2 teams. Potential contenders is going to be probably the next 3 to 4 teams. Teams I think have a legitimate shot of winning. Happy to be here are going to be a number of teams that I think are likely getting top 6, top 8 at this tournament. And they're just kind of happy to qualify for champs. And the missing out on champs will be the 4 squads that missed out. And we'll kind of order them based on how I thought people played at the end of the season. All right, so let's start out at the bottom. We have London, we have LAG. I think for the sake of this video, I guess I'll move London slightly above LAG. Like, LAG just kind of went through the motions at the Toronto event. They looked, like they were already ready to go on vacation or whatever. I thought first map wasn't too much of a blow up by New York, but from there, it just seemed like LAG sort of lost focus and got 3-0'd. And that was kind of it. They played 3 maps at the tournament. 3 maps were down and they were gone, and that's their season over. And obviously a lot of questions on LAG, and we'll cover those in an off-season video later on this week. Now, as for London, I will say this, a great upset versus Boston in losing round 1. I don't think anyone really saw that coming. I thought that was probably the best version of London we have seen all season, that matchup. They played the hard points beautifully. They looked great in the Fortress S&D. Listen, I'll be honest, London's still bad at control. Like, it is what it is. And then they played Thieves, and honestly, the first 2 maps in the series were really close. I think there's another role where London, if they had battled maybe a little bit harder, might have had an opportunity to get top 6 of this tournament. But, it's just a little too late. They were eliminated pretty early on this major cycle. And just like LG, we'll cover sort of their interesting offseason coming up later on this week, early next week. All right, next team we're going to slide down is the Vegas Legion. I know a lot of people were kind of rooting for this squad to make it to champs. They had a tough road ahead of them. They got stomped by FaZe again. Tough time in that matchup all season. They looked great against Seattle. 3-0'd Seattle, who... probably one of the worst form teams now going into champs. And then they just had a stinker on Saturday morning against New York. Really, people were rooting for them to make the run on Saturday to qualify for champs, but they got throttled in that series. I guess the search and control were okay, but like the hard point, I think didn't really set us up for success going forward in that series. And so unfortunately for Vegas, they only got top 8 this tournament. And even though they beat Seattle, they were still a couple points shy of making it to champs. And I think, again, we'll talk about in the offseason video, I think it comes down to, their lack of consistency against most of the teams sort of they should beat at the bottom. They dropped a lot of points there. And I think if they hadn't earlier on the season, if they hadn't played about a major 4, they're probably making it to champs. I don't know if they're going to make it. They would have made it deep in champs, but they would have made it. And then our final team is Florida. And I'm putting Florida over Vegas because to be honest, I think Florida looked like really good in this tournament, or really good sort of at the end of this split. And I think if they had played Vegas at this point, they probably would have beat them. Obviously, at the major, they beat Optic, 3-0'd them, which I thought was very impressive. They battled against Rocker and came up short. Battled against New York, came up short. I guess you can decide between Vegas and Florida which you would order and which way. But for me, I'm going to leave Florida in the spot over Vegas. I think if they had played, they would have probably beat them. And I'm really curious to see what happens with Florida in the offseason. That's going to be an interesting story. They were quite a few points off from making it to champs. They had a lot of bad stages early on trying to find this team, but I feel like by the end, once they got Javi and they started playing some really good Call of Duty, it was just not enough time left on the calendar to do so. All right, so let's do the happy to be here category. I'm going to move a couple of teams down here, and it's really probably going to be these 2. It's going to be these 3 squads to me. We'll make some more tweaks to the 5 up here, but let me kind of explain my reasoning here. I'm going to put Seattle in the 8th spot for right now. Seattle and Boston, I think, are sort of interchangeable for me. for a couple of different reasons. The Seattle team's probably playing some of their worst COD all season. And I'll be honest, since Major 1, they really haven't played a lot of really good COD at events. This team has really only beat LAG at an actual LAN event. And they came in and played 3 maps at this event to Vegas, and then were sent home. And they had lost to Vegas the weekend prior. So you would have hoped that they would have done some prep work and been a little bit more promising in the series. And in fact, the series actually ended up worse in the one online. And I just don't know what to think of the Seattle team. It's clear that this team has run its course. Yes, they are a good hardpoint team, but the other 2 game modes are not great. And then even in the hardpoints, they've started to lose them a bunch since then. They're 3-6 in this stage in hardpoint, 1-5 in search, 1-5 in control. They're coming in horrible form. Now they have pride on their team. Maybe they can find a way to get top 4 at this event. I don't know. But going in, I think what's going to happen in the squad is they're going to get ran by Atlanta FaZe in winners round 1. And then we'll see what happens. Maybe they win a series or 2 in the bracket. But I have a good feeling this team will be going home very early at CHAMPS. And they're going to have a long offseason ahead of them with the SIB and Pred free agent considerations going forward. All right, let's talk about the Boston Breach. This is a team that I thought was sort of slowly over the season, sort of trending in a really good direction. Major 4 was not great for them. They couldn't win a hardpoint to save their lives in Major 4, and they got kind of double rounded at Columbus and got last. And then at this event, you know, they played pretty solid online, and well, what happened again? They got double rounded, including losses to Rocker and London. So I think they're just as down bad as Seattle. Thinking about it now, I would say if they played Seattle, I think Seattle might actually beat them. So I'm going to put Boston actually in last right now. I don't know, man. I think this team is really lacking just a lot of experience that some of the other teams have. I mean, you look at the tier list here, just for understanding. Optic, FaZe, all have a number of rings on their squad and years of Call of Duty experience. Toronto, at least at the CDL level, have played for a long time. New York and Thieves, definitely a lot of experience. And even a team like Rocker has a lot. And Boston is sitting over here with Cramp, who's a rookie. Beans is a rookie. Yeah, Big Wake's been around for a while, but the only events he's won is online. He's never really made to a deep run at a LAN. And then we got Reese Vivid, and Reese has got a decent amount of experience, but he's never won a pro event. And I think the one time he's made a final was Dallas Empire Cold War Major 4 in front of no fans against FaZe, and they lost that. So they just have this big gap in experience, and I think it's really hurting them down the stretch here because they just don't have, I think, like an anchoring presence to really get the team where it needs to be. And I think that's what they're going to have to address in the offseason. And I expect this Boston team, who we're going to play Optic and winners round 1, to have a hard time in that matchup. This team can just like randomly win matches at LAN, although they're kind of 0 for 4 right now. Actually 0 for 5 in their last 5 on LAN. And actually diving even further, if you want to keep picking more stats, I think they have 6 losses their last 7 on LAN. So a little concerned about this Boston team going to this event. I think they're going to be a candidate to be out of the tournament probably by Friday. And then we have the Minnesota Rocker. And honestly, my thing with Rocker is this is like, I don't think this team is that bad. They made this move, bringing Attach back in. They played really pretty solid Call of Duty going into the event. You know, they had Boston round 1. They took care of that in 5. They beat Florida. But then they pulled up to Sunday and they were just no contest for FaZe or New York. Like both series were blowouts. And I think what's having me leave it here is, yes, they got a really solid top 3 placing at this event. I just don't see them beating any of the teams above that we have listed here. Like, I know they beat Thieves online, so nobody complain in the comments. I know. But they are lost to FaZe in New York. If Optic don't play horrible COD, they're not going to be Optic. Toronto, if Toronto actually play quality and don't throw game 5s like they did online against Rocker, they're not going to beat them. I guess you can kind of argue it's sort of borderline on the Sunday regulars potential contenders. But for me, I just don't really see them in the top 5. I think they're probably getting 6th at this tournament. I feel pretty good about that placing, and that's what's betting for moving it up there. Obviously, some people in the comments might feel strongly otherwise, but I just think this is sort of like best of the rest in terms of the bottom 3 at this tournament. I just don't think that they're good enough to make it to the grand final of CHAMPS. All right, then we got kind of this next tier. This is going to be a little bit tricky. So I'm going to move New York up here, move Optic down here, and I'm going to move Toronto down here. And now it's just a case of like how we want to order all this. So I'm actually going to start at the top and then we'll work our way down just to kind of mix things up. So we'll put New York in the 1 spot. They won the last event. They deserve to be the #1 team, are on a massive hot streak in S&D. This is what we said with the squad, that like they need to figure out and get going. They weren't even like playing the best at S&D, I think, prior to this major. I'm looking up the stats right now, and they were winning like 50% of searches, it looks like. But at the major, I think something happened sort of somewhere between the Toronto series and the LAG series. This team just like caught fire. They did play LAG, Vegas, and Florida, but I think they got a lot of confidence from this series. And then they squared up against Toronto and looked really good. And they played Rocker. And then they took 3 searches off of FaZe, which I think is incredible. They sort of grinded out. They almost Neslo'd that series to an extent, losing 2 controls. They split the hard points. Like, I really like that form for New York. Kind of going into champs here. Do I think that they're my favorite team to win champs? I don't think so. Kind of like some of these other squads, maybe a little bit more than New York. But I think they're good value to get at least 3rd at this tournament, maybe sneak into the final. Hydra probably is going to win MVP for me this year based on his MVP performance at this event, which is insane. I just think this New York team is sort of peaked at the right time. They had a great event win, and I'm thinking if we get a New York FaZe rematch again at Champ Sunday, that one might be a good one again at Major 5. I went the distance, and I could see it going again. All right, let's talk Atlanta FaZe, and I think for FaZe fans, I guess it's sort of a mixed bag this weekend. The good side is these are the respawn records for Atlanta FaZe at the end of Stage 5. This is including Major and the online stuff. They were 11-2 in Hardpoint and 7-3 in Control. So overall 18-5 in respawn. And that's a marketed improvement from last stage where they were 7-11 in Hardpoint and 4-6 in Control. So they were 11 for 17 prior to this. So the respawn looks really good. They don't really seem to have like a super weak map set. I think Hotel Control they're probably going to avoid, but this team looks really good on Asilo. They didn't lose a single Asilo this entire split. They look really good at Expo as well, winning both they played at the LAN event. So I think if you're a FaZe fan, you feel good. It was a little weird for them to lose 3 S&Ds in this series at Asilo. S&D, if they had won that, it was GG's, and they didn't. So that kind of sucks. But I think if I had to pick a team in the top 5 that I would stake making the grand finals of champs, it's probably FaZe. They are getting the respawn in the right moment. They're not going to lose 3 searches again in the final. This team is heading into this final event of the season in the right form. I think the last hurdle for them is to win, and they may have to play against Optic, and that obviously has been a difficult matchup for them. But this is what you signed up for if you're an Atlanta FaZe fan. They're looking good in the final event and should be value to make a deep run. So here's where we get to the tricky part. I have no idea how to order all these teams. So I'm going to immediately put Thieves probably behind Optic because I don't think that Thieves start to finish this stage really played that well. Online, they were very, very, very poor. They did, however, at this major, beat Optic, beat London, and then lose to Toronto. So I just don't know, like, if I want to put Thieves in front of Optic here. I would say maybe just based on consistency at LAN this year, maybe I would. But it's like, I just don't, and I'm curious what y'all think. Like, I just don't know how to order these two teams. Because I think they both have different issues that would make me concerned about their performance potentially at champs. Like, I think that the slang for Thieves is not where it was last stage. And I'm not even talking about the online portion. Like, you know, going to this major, they played a lot of hotel. They were looking good at it. And then they played a Toronto team that has struggled to slay against most teams. And they beat them. So I just don't know what to think with Thieves. They're going to play and have a really difficult COD champs kind of bracket. And they're going to have to beat 2 of the top 5 teams to sort of like get there at champs, which is doable. Like, I think they can beat, you know, Toronto in that last match. And then I think that they can potentially be FaZe to make it to winners finals, but it's going to be hard. And if they drop down, they're going to have to play Seattle and then probably like New York. So I'm going to put Thieves behind Optic right now, but man, it's just really tough. All right, let's talk about Optic, man. Dude, I really got to feel like, I know people call me like some kind of like FaZe fanboy or whatever, but like, I'll not to like digress too much or go off topic in this video, but like I started working at like Optic Intel. So I have a soft spot for Optic, and I would say it's like a romantic a little bit about the COD team. Like, I want to see this Optic team at some point really push themselves into the #1 conversation, like win a couple of events. I know it was looking like that at the beginning of last season, and the Illy hand injury thing happened, and then it's looking like that this year, but they went to back-to-back finals and didn't win. And then this event coming in online, like, they were looking dominant. They only dropped a couple of maps. They were cruising. They beat FaZe, they beat Toronto. You're like, okay, this team feels really good about their matchups. And they played probably the worst Call of Duty this team has played entirely all season. They did not play good in a single one of the maps that they played at this event. I would say the only map that was close was Expo Control. And I don't even think they won an offense on that Expo. I think it was just a bunch of defenses. But man, they got blown out in the hard points. They got blown out in the searches. I had heard the scrims also didn't go too well at this event. Like, they were getting beat by the top teams around the same score line. Something was really off with this Optic team at this event, and they've got about 2 weeks now to figure it out. I just can't point you to like stats or this or that to really kind of say this is the issue. I think everybody on the team played very poorly. Now, they have a system that relies heavily on the aggression of their subs, and they don't really play, or they really struggle to play then disciplined Call of Duty on the back end of that if they're chasing games in hardpoint. I'm also very concerned about the search performance, because even if their hardpoint wasn't kind of firing on all cylinders this weekend, they could have still kind of grinded out series on their searches, and they were just getting blooded too easily. They lost Mercado, which they looked like the best Mercado team in S&D coming into this, and then Hotel, you know, that's one of Thieves' best maps, and New York just couldn't match, or rather Optic couldn't match up. So I don't know what to think about this Optic team, man. I really don't. They should be one of the favorites for champs. They've got a pretty solid bracket. Like, they're going to play Boston round 1, should beat them. They'll then square up against New York. They avoid like Thieves, Ultra, and FaZe until top 3. But my concern with Optic is just the last 6 maps. So this is the team I think of the 5. I really don't know what kind of form they're going to come into champs with. If it's a team we saw online, they might actually do it and win. If it's not, I think they could bomb out of this tournament again, and it's going to be a very interesting offseason with the Pride situation, some other free agents, and what they might do to blow up the team slightly. But definitely a weird time for Optic fans, and an overall just weird event in general for them, not to their standards. All right, let's talk Toronto Ultra. They're going to be kind of ahead in the pack of this, because I think they're sort of the one team of the 3 that probably played the best. Coming in their home event, they were looking good. I was a little concerned about some of the Game 5 losses online, say to Rocker before the event, but okay. They played New York. Didn't slay well in that series, but they grinded it out. I was like, cool. Then they played FaZe, and the only map that I thought that they looked and like solid on was the S&D Embassy. Like, they were controlling that. S&D, FaZe kind of battled back, but then Toronto clutched up. The Hotel hardpoint ending was kind of wild, actually thinking about it. That was pretty close. But for Toronto, I think their slaying was a big problem against FaZe. They played Ultra. Slaying wasn't a problem in that series. They were cruising. And then they played New York. It went to 5. They took care of the Hotel S&D, which I thought was a nice victory out of Toronto, and the Control, which they're clearly still one of the best Control teams, if not the best Control team in the game coming in. But then they really kind of had a dud on the hardpoint Embassy, like Hydra, and then kids were just going off. And then the S&D Mercado was close and they lost. My concern with Toronto really is, I just think that when we look at the skill talent on like a team like FaZe, or even a team like New York, because I think Priest is an X factor, I just think like we need the sub duo on Toronto to step up. I just think that Kleenex has had 2 like kind of events in a row. Not bad, not great. I think Hixies can be an X factor in series, but he can also definitely swing deep to the other side and get smoked. So I'm just concerned about the slaying power in this Toronto team compared to other teams in their category. But what I like from Toronto is, even when I don't think they played their best Call of Duty this weekend, and I don't think that like top 4, which I believe is what they got this event, I'll double check that right now, was sort of what they wanted kind of coming in. I still think this team's got a very good chance at making it to the Champs Grand Final, just on their ability to sort of grind things out and how solidly consistent they've been throughout the season. That being said to all of that, as we talked about earlier on, they have to play Thieves round 1. And I think that Thieves always come in and prepare well when they have a time like this. And if Thieves can kind of bring that Hotel S&D prowess that we've seen, fix some of their issues on Hotel Hardpoint, like, I think they can cause a real problem for Toronto and send them down early. And then Toronto would have to kind of grind through all losers. So I think this is a good spot for them. I feel the best of them of the 3 down here. But I think between these 5 teams you see here, just to kind of then segue from my final thoughts on champs. And again, we'll do like a bracket video and some other stuff. I think FaZe is the only team I feel good about making it to the Champs Grand Final. I don't know of the 4 here who is going to be the other team, because you could make a case of New York's got this momentum. They just seem to do what they did this weekend in 2 weeks and get it done. Toronto's already won an event this season. They didn't play too bad this event. They lost to the eventual champions. So you feel good about that. Optic had a dud weekend, but played good online and were 2 runners up the events prior. So, you know, there's room there. And then Thieves obviously won Major 4 and had a bad Major 5. So as long as they get back to the Major 4 form, they're good. So it's a mess right now and a wide open event, and I'm super excited. This tier list, I think, to me kind of makes sense. There's a couple of things that maybe people would sort of swap around. Maybe the Florida Vegas thing at the bottom. Potential contenders is kind of hard to categorize that stuff, but I feel good about the grouping here in this tier list. Well, let me know in the comments what you think of the video. Like if you enjoyed. We've got a lot of champs and off-season preview stuff coming up this week, so it's going to be a packed YouTube schedule over the next 2.5 weeks, so make sure you tune in and check out my videos every day on my channel. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.